When was the last time you felt that certain people disappeared from your life unexpectedly? As if suddenly, that friendship that seemed eternal vanished without explanation, or that relationship you tried so hard to maintain faded away despite all your efforts. What if I told you this isn't just coincidence, that there's a deeper purpose behind these apparent losses? Carl Jung, one of the most revolutionary thinkers in modern psychology, had a fascinating perspective on this phenomenon. He called it synchronicity, those seemingly random events that are actually perfectly orchestrated by something much greater than ourselves. And today, I want to share with you why, according to Jung, destiny protects you by removing people who don't vibrate at your same frequency. Imagine for a moment that your life is like a river, a body of water flowing naturally toward a specific destination. When you're aligned with your true nature, with that current everything flows. But what happens when you try to swim against the current? When you insist on keeping people close who energetically no longer fit your path? The universe, or as Jung would call it, the collective unconscious, begins to send you signals. At first, these signals are subtle. An unexplainable discomfort when you're with a certain person. A feeling in your chest telling you something isn't right. Jung believed these intuitions aren't just passing emotions, they're messages from your unconscious, that part of you connected to something much greater. Your inner being knows, before your conscious mind does, when someone is no longer aligned with your evolution. But we often ignore these signals. Why? Because we've grown accustomed to prioritizing comfort over growth. We prefer to stay in relationships that drain us because we fear loneliness. We maintain toxic friendships because it's what's expected of us. And so, day after day, we abandon ourselves to maintain the familiar, even when the familiar is slowly destroying us. Jung explained this perfectly when he talked about the individuation process, that journey toward becoming who we truly are. This process inevitably involves letting go of people, situations, and versions of ourselves that no longer serve our higher purpose. But what happens when we resist this natural process? This is where the wisdom of destiny comes in. When you refuse to let go of what no longer belongs to you, the universe intervenes. That person who drains you will begin to drift away on their own. Conflicts will arise seemingly out of nowhere. Circumstances will align so that separation becomes inevitable. And although it may seem painful in the moment, Jung reminds us that this apparent chaos always has a purpose, to protect your energy and guide you toward your true path. Think about the significant relationships you've had throughout your life. Now remember those that ended abruptly or unexpectedly. In the moment, perhaps you felt confusion, pain, or even anger. But look at yourself now, with the perspective that only time can give. Isn't it true that many of those losses, in retrospect, were actually gains? Didn't you realize months or years later that that person was limiting you in some way? Jung firmly believed that our unconscious is always working for our highest good, even when we don't understand it. He called it the wisdom of the unconscious. This concept suggests there's a part of you that knows exactly what you need to grow, even when your ego resists. And sometimes, what you need is precisely to distance yourself from certain people. But this doesn't mean you should blame yourself for relationships that didn't work, or for keeping people close who didn't value you. Jung taught us about the shadow, that part of us containing rejected or denied aspects of our personality. Often, we allow relationships that don't nourish us because there are parts of ourselves we haven't yet accepted or integrated. Imagine you've spent your whole life believing you don't deserve true love. This belief, probably formed in childhood, has become part of your shadow. You don't see it consciously, but it influences all your decisions. The result? You attract relationships where you're not valued, where you have to constantly strive to be accepted. And when these relationships finally end, you feel abandoned, not understanding that the universe is freeing you from patterns that don't allow you to experience the authentic love you deserve. Jung called this process shadow projection. We tend to attract people who reflect our unrecognized parts. So, If you haven't accepted your own worth, you'll likely attract relationships where others don't recognize it either. This is a cycle that can repeat over and over until you finally decide to look at yourself honestly and begin the work of integrating your shadow. How do you know if you're in a relationship that no longer vibrates with you? Jung left us some clues that remain incredibly relevant. First, observe your energy. After spending time with a certain person, do you feel revitalized or exhausted? Energy doesn't lie. Your body knows at a cellular level which relationships nourish you and which drain you. Second, pay attention to synchronicity. Do you notice constant obstacles to seeing this person? Last-minute cancellations, misunderstandings, conflicts that seem to come out of nowhere? This isn't bad luck. It's the universe trying to show you something. Third, observe your dreams. Jung dedicated much of his life to studying dreams, considering them direct messages from the unconscious. If you repeatedly dream of conflicts or uncomfortable situations involving a certain person, your unconscious might be warning you about a fundamental energetic incompatibility. But perhaps most importantly is this: when you're with someone who truly vibrates with you, you feel a deep sense of peace. There's no need to pretend, to struggle, or to be someone you're not. Jung described it as a recognition of the soul. It's as if, at a level that transcends the physical, that person and you are made of the same essential substance. And it's precisely because the universe wants you to experience more of these authentic connections that it sometimes removes from your path those who aren't aligned with your frequency. It's not a punishment. It's a redirection toward what you truly deserve. This concept of vibration we're discussing isn't simply a New Age idea. Jung spoke of the collective unconscious, that invisible network connecting all human beings. Within this network, there are currents of energy, archetypes, and patterns that influence our interactions. When two people are tuned to similar or complementary patterns, there's a natural resonance. When they're not, dissonance arises. Dissonance isn't necessarily negative. Sometimes meeting people who vibrate differently helps us grow, expand our perspectives. But there's a type of dissonance Jung identified as potentially harmful. That which arises when someone is constantly projecting their unintegrated shadow onto you. Imagine you meet someone extremely critical. This person finds flaws in everything you do, is never satisfied, always expects more. If your self-esteem is already fragile, this dynamic can be devastating. But from a Jungian perspective, this person is simply projecting their own fierce self-criticism onto you. Their criticism doesn't really have to do with you. It's a reflection of their inner battle. Jung taught us that the first step to freeing ourselves from these toxic dynamics is recognizing what part of us is hooked. Why do we allow a certain person to treat us in a certain way? What belief about ourselves is being reinforced by this relationship? Only when we recognize our part in the pattern can we begin to dismantle it. And this is where the magic really happens. When you begin to do this inner work, when you start integrating your shadow and recognizing your true worth, something fascinating occurs. The people who don't vibrate with you begin to disappear from your life almost effortlessly. Jung explained it as a change in your energy field. As you transform internally, you're no longer a match for those who are connected to your old patterns. They simply stop resonating with you. And in their place, you begin to attract people who are aligned with this new, more authentic version of yourself. This doesn't mean you should passively wait for destiny to remove toxic people from your life. Jung was a firm advocate for personal responsibility. He believed that while the unconscious guides us, our duty is to actively listen and make conscious decisions based on that guidance. Sometimes this means establishing clear boundaries with people who don't respect your energy. Other times, it means ending relationships that you know deep down no longer serve you. But even in these cases, if you observe carefully, you'll notice that the universe was already giving you signals, creating circumstances that made the need for that separation increasingly evident. The real challenge is trusting this process, trusting that, as Jung would say, the unconscious has a wisdom that transcends our limited conscious understanding. Trusting that those losses that seem so painful in the moment are, in reality, openings towards something much more aligned with your essence. Think of it like a garden. Sometimes it's necessary to prune certain plants so others can fully flourish. The gardener doesn't prune out of cruelty, but out of love for the garden as a whole. In the same way, the universe sometimes removes people from your life not to punish you, but to create space for connections that will truly nourish your soul. Jung also told us about the alchemical process of transformation. In alchemy, to create gold, you must first go through phases of dissolution and separation. The same happens in our personal growth. Those relationships that end, those bonds that dissolve, are a necessary part of your process of becoming psychological gold, your most authentic and luminous version. And it's precisely when you reach that authenticity that you experience another fundamental Jungian principle, the attraction of complementary opposites. Jung believed that, paradoxically, when we're completely aligned with ourselves, we attract not those who are identical to us, but those who perfectly complement our energy, creating a dynamic balance. These are the relationships destiny has been preparing for you all this time. Connections where there's no energy drain, but an exchange that enriches both parties. Relationships where your growth is celebrated, not feared. Bonds where you can be completely yourself, without fear of judgment or rejection. But to experience these deep connections, you must first be willing to let go of those that are just taking up space in your life. As Jung would say, you must be willing to symbolically die to the old to be reborn to the new. This process isn't always linear or easy. There will be moments when you doubt, when you wonder if you really should let someone go. In those moments, Jung would invite us to look beyond the rational mind, to consult with that inner compass we all possess, intuition. Intuition, according to Jung, is a form of perception that transcends logic. It's knowledge that comes from the unconscious, allowing you to grasp truths your conscious mind hasn't yet processed. And when it comes to relationships, your intuition knows long before your mind who is truly aligned with your path. Perhaps you're experiencing that intuition right now regarding someone in your life. That uncomfortable feeling you can't rationally explain, but that's there, whispering that something isn't right. Jung would tell you, listen, don't ignore that inner voice. It may be trying to protect you, guide you toward relationships that truly honor who you are. But it's also important to distinguish between genuine intuition and fear. Sometimes we reject potentially transformative relationships because they activate our deepest wounds. Jung would warn us against confusing the voice of our wounds with the voice of our inner wisdom. How to distinguish? Genuine intuition has a quality of silent certainty, of peace, even when what it perceives is uncomfortable. Fear, on the other hand, comes accompanied by anxiety, a frantic feeling, obsessive thoughts. When you're connected with your intuition, even difficult truths feel like a liberation. When you're trapped in fear, even the most beautiful possibilities feel threatening. Jung believed that part of our work in this life is refining this internal discernment capacity, learning to distinguish between the noise of our fears and the clear signal of our intuition. And as we do this, we become increasingly skilled at recognizing which relationships are truly aligned with our destiny and which are simply temporary lessons on our path. A powerful way to connect with this intuition is through the practice of conscious reflection. Jung was a great advocate for dedicating time each day to introspection, to dialoguing with the deepest parts of ourselves. In these moments of quiet, the answers we seek about our relationships often emerge with surprising clarity. Imagine dedicating a few minutes each night before sleeping to reviewing your interactions of the day. Who did you feel energized by? Who exhausted you? Which conversations left you with a sense of expansion and which with one of contraction? This simple exercise, practiced consistently, will help you map your relational landscape, see patterns you might have overlooked. And as you identify these patterns, you can begin to make more conscious decisions. Perhaps you decide to spend less time with people who consistently leave you exhausted, or maybe you begin to establish clearer boundaries in certain relationships, or in some cases, you decide to honor the universe's signal and allow certain bonds to reach their natural end. Jung emphasized that there's no right or wrong decision in absolute terms. What matters is that your choices are aligned with your individuation process, with your path toward becoming who you truly are. Sometimes this means maintaining difficult relationships because they have something important to teach you. Other times it means letting go of even seemingly good relationships because you intuit that your soul needs to expand in new directions. The key is intention. Are you making decisions from fear, obligation, or guilt? Or are you choosing from a place of authenticity, of respect for your own growth? Jung would remind us that each conscious choice, each act of self-affirmation, is one more step in our journey toward wholeness. And it's precisely on this journey that we discover a beautiful paradox. The more we honor our individuality, the more deeply we can connect with others. When we stop pretending, adapting, contorting ourselves to fit into relationships that don't correspond to us, we create space for bonds that celebrate exactly who we are. These are the bonds destiny has been saving for you all this time. Relationships where your light doesn't threaten the other, but inspires them. Where your gifts are received with gratitude, not envy. Where you can be completely yourself and, in doing so, invite the other to do the same. Jung describes it as a meeting of souls. That moment when you look at someone and beyond words feel a deep recognition, as if something in you remembers something in them. These encounters aren't casual. They're orchestrated by that greater intelligence Jung called the collective unconscious. And if you've been experiencing more separations than encounters lately, have faith. Destiny is simply clearing your path, preparing you for connections that truly honor the person you're becoming. Each relationship that ends is a space that opens for something more aligned. Remember that, from the Jungian perspective, you're not alone in this process. You're being guided, protected, and directed toward experiences that will nourish your soul. The universe isn't indifferent to your suffering or your joy. It's intimately involved in your evolution, using every circumstance, every encounter, and every separation as tools for your growth. So the next time you feel a relationship is ending, instead of resisting, ask yourself, what is the universe trying to show me? What is it protecting me from? Where is it guiding me? And trust that, although you may not see the entire path, each step is taking you exactly where you need to be. As Jung would remind us, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Whoever looks outside dreams. Whoever looks inside awakes. And it's in this awakening that we discover destiny never takes something from us without eventually revealing why it was necessary. So, if you're in the midst of a loss, a separation, remember, you're not losing, you're being redirected. Destiny is protecting you, removing from your path those who no longer vibrate with you to make space for those who do. And in this process, you're not just finding more authentic relationships, you're finding yourself. And this, perhaps, is the true reason why destiny intervenes, not just to protect you from others, but to protect you from versions of yourself that you've already outgrown. To ensure you don't remain trapped in dynamics that no longer reflect who you truly are. To guarantee that your external environment updates to reflect your internal evolution. Isn't it beautiful to think that the universe is so committed to your growth that it's willing to remove any obstacle in your way, even if that obstacle is a relationship you once valued? Isn't it comforting to know that, at a level that transcends what we can consciously understand, we're being cared for, guided, protected? Jung would invite us to see these separations not as failures, but as initiations. Each relationship that ends is a rite of passage into a new phase of your life, a new understanding of yourself. And although the process may be painful, it will eventually lead you to a place of greater authenticity, freedom, and peace. So what do you do now? How do you actively collaborate with this process instead of resisting it? Jung would suggest beginning with authenticity, being honest with yourself about what you truly feel, what you truly need, what you truly desire. Stop pretending, adapting, settling for less than what you know deep down you deserve. And then, from that authenticity, make brave decisions. Sometimes this means being the first to walk away from relationships you know don't nourish you. Other times, it means simply stopping trying so hard to maintain bonds that if they were really right for you, would flow with much more ease. Remember that each time you honor your truth, you're aligning with that greater force Jung recognized, that intelligence that's always working for your highest good. And in that alignment, you discover you don't need to struggle so much, control so much, try so hard. You can simply flow, trusting that destiny will carry you exactly toward the experiences and people your soul is seeking. And finally, practice gratitude. Even for the separations, even for the losses. Because as Jung taught us, it's often precisely these moments of apparent darkness that prepare the way for a new dawn in our lives. A dawn where you find yourself surrounded not by people who drain your light, but by those who reflect and multiply it. If this message has resonated with you, if you feel you're in the midst of this process of separation and redirection, I want you to know you're not alone. Thousands of people are experiencing the same thing right now, awakening to a deeper understanding of who they are and what kind of relationships they truly deserve. And if you've liked this video, if it's touched something within you, I invite you to share it with someone you think might benefit from hearing it. Sometimes, a simple video can be the answer someone has been looking for, the reminder they needed that separations aren't the end, but the beginning of something much more beautiful. Also, I'd love to know your experience. Have you noticed how destiny has removed people from your life who no longer vibrated with you? What did you discover later, with time, about the purpose of those separations? Leave your reflection in the comments, because each story shared not only enriches our community, but might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. And if you haven't done so yet, subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss future videos about personal growth, deep psychology, and the teachings of great masters like Carl Jung, which continue to be incredibly relevant to our individual journey. Always remember, destiny protects you. Even when you don't understand its method, trust the process, trust your intuition, and above all, trust that you deserve relationships that reflect and celebrate your light, not try to diminish it. See you in the next video, and in the meantime, allow destiny to do its work, clearing your path so you can move forward toward the extraordinary life that's waiting for you.